Fox News is starting to say out loud what we've been saying for years, is that the Republicans are trying to destroy public education. See for yourself.
But also maybe a great time in our country's history where we rethink whether or not we have public schools. Maybe we should not have the government involved in education at all.
There is glaring evidence of this in Florida. Ron DeSantis has been attacking public education every way he can. And we've seen it for years with Betsy DeVos's attacks on public education. The Republican Party really hates the educated voter base because they know if you're smart, you would never vote for their shitty policies.
Well, I mean, that's one theory. But, I mean, he talks about, like, getting rid of public school system as if it's a bad thing. I mean, you know, we haven't had public school system, like, for the entire history of mankind. And, like, before it, we did some pretty great things. I don't know. I don't think it's all that useful, but whatever. Now we're just a bunch of dull, docile, weak people who just sit on our phones watching 10-second videos all day. So maybe it might be a good idea. But hi, welcome to another episode of A Couple of Hoosiers podcast. I'm your host, Ricky Kurtz.
I'm your co-host, Charlie Goldsmith.
And we tried doing this episode Thursday night, but technology hates me and Charlie, so now we're going to do it tonight.
You mainly.
Mainly.
Just you mainly.
Probably. I could agree
Me a
with
little
that.
bit.
Just a little bit. But yeah, we were going to talk about, like, you know, the Hollywood satanic sex cults that they have, but who cares? We're just going to talk about the history of the public education. And
I mean, I do care. I don't want them motherfuckers out there.
Yeah, neither do I. We'll probably save it for another time because there's, like, a lot of other stuff that goes into that, like with I know a lot of them, like, follow in the steps of, like, this guy, Aleister Crowley, who has thought that he was some sort of wizard and ended up being, like, some broke crackhead who spent all of his dad's money. But that's for another time. We're going to talk
an awful lot like somebody else that I've heard of. He has a laptop right now. Well, had a laptop.
I just put the puzzle pieces together.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was hoping you'd get it.
I was like,
gonna
wait.
Throw more clues out there to you.
I was like, wait, I have a laptop. I didn't do that, though. Not yet. Who knows what the future holds? Okay, but let's go ahead and run this ad for any new viewers, any possible new viewers. Let them know where they can find us. A Couple of Hoosiers podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, CastBox, pretty much anywhere that you get your podcasts. We do a live stream show. We usually do it either on Odysee or YouTube, and then we go ahead and upload it to Rumble and Bitchute, pretty much anywhere that we can. But if you want to follow the podcast and really, like, get everything, go to cohpodcast.substack.com. I inform people of new episodes coming out, and I write all these blogs that are pretty interesting. So go check it out. We do still have the old website, coupleofhoosiers.com, but WordPress is kind of gay, and I'm not going to use it anymore. So I'm going over to Substack. That's going to be where the main website thing is. Maybe I might put a domain name on it. That way it's just cohpodcast.com instead of all the Substack stuff. But I don't know. I like it a little bit better than WordPress.
A lot of it better, a little bit better.
Well, I can write blogs from my phone pretty easy. The only thing that I don't like is I haven't found how to, like, do the hyperlinks for, like, articles that I include, because I like to show people, like, what articles we're reading from when I'm going through the blog and all that stuff. So usually I'll have to, like, add the link in and then go back later on my computer and hyperlink it so people can actually click on it. But let's go ahead and just start getting into this. We're going to talk about, I want to first, before we get into, like, any of the articles, look at Merriam-Webster's definition for education and indoctrination, because, you know, that's a good starting point to, like, figure out whether or not, like, our school systems are educating or indoctrinating. But let's go ahead and take a look. So let's start off with educate. It is a verb. Synonyms include educated and educating. But The definition: to provide schooling for, or to train by formal instruction and supervised practice, especially in a skill, trade, or profession. The second definition: to develop mentally, morally, or aesthetically, especially by instruction. To provide with information. 3. To persuade or condition to feel, believe, or act in a desired way. That is Merriam-Webster's definitions for educate. I don't know.
What's the last one again? Say it again. It's a little blurry on my screen, so I can't quite interpret it.
Number 3 says to persuade or condition to feel, believe, or act in a desired way.
I don't like that last one.
Yeah.
I like the first two. They're pretty decent.
Yeah. Although I'm kind of skeptical on how public school systems are educating people in the second way. If it's to develop mentally, morally, through instructions, like what morals are they actually teaching kids these days, if any? Because
not
the
necessarily any anymore, but I mean, when I was in school, we would teach, right and wrong, good and bad. This is good, this is bad. That's what kindergarten and shit's for.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and look at indoctrinate now, because I don't know, it kind of seems the same. So, indoctrinate, it is a verb. Synonyms include indoctrinated, indoctrinating. First definition: to imbue with a usually partisan or sectarian opinion, point of view, or principle. Number 2, to instruct, especially in fundamentals or rudiments. Doesn't sound like it doesn't sound all that different from like what they say educate is.
Actually, I think it's similar. It's just worded differently.
Yeah, it's more like, because in this they're saying like one particular like point of view is how they're trying to do it in indoctrinating. But I did like this down here. They said, did you know indoctrinate means brainwash to many people, but its meaning isn't always so negative. When the verb first appeared in English in the 17th century, it simply meant to teach, a meaning linked closely to its source, the Latin verb ducer. Yeah, I don't know Latin. I don't know. Which
I can't
also
really read it, but is it D-O-S-S-I-E-R?
No, it's D-O-C, and then an E with a line over it, and then an R, and then an E with no line over it. Not sure what the line over the E.
I wish I could see it.
Dutcher, whatever. But it also means to teach. Other offspring of whatever that word is includes docile, doctor, document, and of course, doctrine. By the 19th century, indoctrinate was being used in the sense of teaching someone to fully accept only the ideas, opinions, and beliefs of a particular group.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean...
See, that almost coincides with 3 of education.
Yeah, because...
Not completely, but almost.
Yeah, because 3 was to persuade or condition to feel, believe, or act in a desired way. So, indoctrinate and educate, kind of similar. According to Merriam-Webster, if you believe them. I know I've heard some pretty shady stuff about them, how they're kind of like twisting up definitions these days, but who knows?
And that's sad. That's sad, because when I was a kid, we used to have a Webster's dictionary in the old Scrabble game whenever we play Scrabble or whatnot. You know what I mean? So
well, it's been a while since I've read about it, but like actually like reading about the guy Merriam-Webster and like when he first decided to like go through and write the dictionary and all that stuff. It's pretty interesting. Read your history. It's pretty good. They got some interesting stuff in there. But let's go ahead and go over to this first article. We're just going to jump into it. This article is questioning whether or not our public schools indoctrinate kids without almost anyone noticing. From the Federalist. If you guys follow the show, you guys probably know that I do like this this website. I tend to agree with them on some things more than often, but I mean, I think they're pretty good. They do some solid work over here, and you should definitely check them out. But for education, how public schools indoctrinate kids without almost anyone knowing. This was written by August Mayrat. That's a name. And it was written October 26, 2018. And it is an 8-minute read. What is this over here? Detransitioners are being abandoned by medical professionals who devastated their bodies and minds. True. But we're not going to get into that topic because we got plenty of stuff to talk about already. So let's get into this article. Many people have long suspected that governments... Something happened on my screen. It was weird. Stop it! I'm trying to read.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean it.
Many people have
Try
long...
not to do it again.
You better. Many people have long suspected that governments sometimes attempt to indoctrinate their peoples to increase the government's own power and influence. Unfortunately, ambitious governments will not stop at merely controlling what their people can do. They must control their minds. Indoctrination happens through many channels: entertainment, speeches, and censorship, but its main instrument is the school system. Teachers have a captive audience of malleable young minds for several years. They may not have figured out how to make students smart and productive, but they can at least make them submissive and obedient. I mean, I think that's like a big thing that we're seeing these days. Like, people like just tend to look at, because I mean, throughout like the school system, I mean, when I was in there, like any history or anything that we were talking about always shed a bright light. Well, if that's like how I want to phrase it, on the government. Like this government was something that you could trust, and like there was no flaws with them. And then after I got out of school and started like doing my own reading and all that stuff, I started finding out our government is kind of a dick. Kind of an asshole. They do some messed up stuff. Which, I mean, all governments do. What are you going to do? But that last part about like making people like submissive and obedient, because generally with like education, it like normally like we look at it as like you're supposed to be instructed on how to like learn and like be able to learn on your own. That's like generally the best way that education should be. And like I recently started listening to some stuff about homeschooling, and that's generally like what their goal is with homeschooling, is like teach your kids how to like learn on their own. Because I know a lot of them are saying, because one thing that like always like messed with me was that schools lasted like 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And like I'm hearing from like a lot of these people that do homeschooling is that they can get everything done in about 3 hours in a day.
Yeah.
Like, and their kids do great on their test and all this stuff. And like, so like, and I've always looked at that as like the 8 hour day. That's kind of like the work system. Like that's the work schedule. You technically work an 8 hour day. So they're just trying to get kids used to that. And
working 9 to 5.
I mean, we do need workers, but I mean, we don't need useless cattle just doing whatever they're told.
Yeah, on this next part, judging by results from most people's experience, indoctrination is not only a problem with rogue regimes, but also a distinctly American problem. However, here it is difficult to determine the extent of indoctrinations, how it works, or even if it works.
Now, I would say that it's not just distinctly an American problem, because, I mean, you can look like over in like Asia and stuff like that, like China, their school system, like they're a complete communist.
Their classrooms look very similar to their marching soldiers outside.
Yeah, and then I know I've read about I want to say it was Cambodia and Pol Pot. I think it was Pol Pot that was doing it, but like he was a messed up guy. Not communism isn't fun, especially for the people under it, but yeah, I want to say that the indoctrination throughout the school system is distinctively an American problem. I think like several governments have used it as a way to keep their subjects beneath them. Okay, so most Americans might receive a mediocre education. True. But this education may be so mediocre that the intended brainwashing might not even be effective. True, some will feel the burn, Bernie Sanders, and join the Socialist Party, and others will become feminist and beat up women who protest abortion. Seen it. A precious few may even become conservatives. Most, though, seem content to remain disengaged from politics, religion, and most ideas in general, and allow the mainstream media to think for them.
I see that every day, dude.
Like, I don't want to have my own view on something. I don't want to offend somebody. I'm just gonna, go with the flow and let whatever happens. I don't want to think for myself. Like I do see that a lot.
A lot.
Far from resembling a unified collective, society has become more polarized and tribal. True. Some might see this as evidence of the failure of indoctrination and the insuppressible human desire for freedom and justice. But they are mistaken. Indoctrination does work, and it is one of the main reasons America is so divided. They left out the of, and I don't like it when people do that. I don't know about other people who like do any writing, but like especially for me when I'm doing my blogs, like I swear, like I check over that thing like 3 to 4 times before I actually submit it, just to make sure I'm not missing anything. And I still miss stuff every once in a while. Like I'll go back and check through, and I'm like, damn it! I have to re-edit. Come on, people, read your shit. You want to go ahead and read this part?
Few people seem to have a clear definition of indoctrination and thus call anything they dislike indoctrination, i.e. leftist professors are indoctrinating their students, those fundamentalist Christians are indoctrinating their kids, or Facebook is indoctrinating its users. While indoctrination involves pushing a certain opinion, it is also much more. It is a comprehensive effort of passively disseminating a particular viewpoint. The passive aspect is key. People who are indoctrinated with a certain narrative or ideology do not arrive at the intended conclusions to their own thinking. They hear the same thing repeated in a million different ways until they finally take it as an unquestionable truth.
Safe and effective. It's safe and effective. We swear it is safe and effective.
It's effective and safe. It's effectively safe. It's safely effective.
Almost sounded like you could like turn that into like a Dr. Seuss book. Like
damn near.
That's what I was hearing as we were saying it, but let's go ahead and keep on going because this is where it gets interesting. Because indoctrination happens in the absence of thinking, many teachers who engage in indoctrination do so unconsciously. And this is like something that like I've been saying for a while about like this whole thing that's going on with like the educational system where like these teachers, like I believe that they're just because like when you look at like morals and truths and such like that, like we've gone from like knowing an objective truth and moral to more of a subjective truth and moral where like when you get into the subjectivity or I can't speak when it's subjective, like multiple forms of truths and morals can be true. And I think like a lot of these people don't really realize that they are doing some form of indoctrination. They just believe like what they're saying to be true, and they want to teach others like what they believe. And like it almost is coming off like maybe like unconsciously, and they don't realize that they're doing it. Some of them probably do though.
Some of these teachers probably do, but I believe that a good majority of them are like, I'm here for the kids. I want to help the kids. I've always wanted to teach kids.
But they don't.
They go into it with the best intentions, but they don't understand that the curriculum is being taught.
What is the old saying? The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
True. I really like a really good example of like what I'm saying. I think I've said this before, and I always keep on forgetting to like grab the picture when I know that I'm going to be like bringing this up. But it's that old picture of two people looking at either a 6 or a 9. From one side, somebody sees it as a 6. From the other side, somebody sees it as a 9, and that's like kind of like a good example of like what's going on. Like especially like people can like look at like through history and like have their own interpretation of like what history is. Like take the Civil War for example. Like I know like when I was in school, like a lot of people were teaching, well, the Civil War happened to end slavery, but when you like start looking more into like the Civil War, a lot of it was just like trying to reestablish the Union and keep the South from succeeding, and like yeah, it ended slavery, but I think that was kind of like a bonus, and that wasn't their main intent, especially when you read about what Abraham Lincoln wanted. But some people look at things differently. But let's continue on this article. They themselves take what they are given and pass it along without thinking. Ideologues often intervene at this level by writing the scripts for teachers, which is how LGBT advocacy and anti-Semitic fabrications become included in their lessons. Thoughtlessness is essential as the fictional demon Screwtape from C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letter states in his letters to Wormwood. It is funny how mortals always picture us as putting things into their minds. In reality, our best work is done by keeping things out. A person who really thinks will eventually reason himself out of the things he heard at school. Go ahead and do the next two.
In some ways, this could be good. He can reason his way out of utopian thinking that contradicts reality. It could also be bad. He could reason his way out of superstitious beliefs, but not have the wherewithal to take the next step of adopting reasonable beliefs. For this reason, it is often fruitless for Republican politicians to insist in incorporating their more conservative viewpoints, or for conservative intellectuals to decry bias in U.S. history classes, or for classical schools to replace Maya Angelou with Tacitus.
Yeah, I don't know. I those
Tacitus,
are probably,
I think, is a Greek
yeah, it sounds
person.
like yeah, it sounds like maybe Maya Angelou. Yeah, it's probably something like historical and.
If students are still receiving the material passively, a switch of content will not help. And in the case of introducing classical literature, it will usually backfire. English teachers have soured multiple generations of Americans on Shakespeare because they taught it as a propaganda, not as dense text requiring complex thought.
Shakespeare does require complex thought when reading his words, but I really like what they were kind of saying up here. How they said he could reason his way out of utopian thinking that contradicts reality. Like I've been thinking about that a lot with like a lot of things that people are trying to do, especially when it comes to like climate and like social justice and all this stuff. Like a lot of the things that they're trying to promote, while good, almost sound like a utopian world. Like nobody hates each other. The world is perfectly healthy and all this stuff. Like it really does contradict reality. I mean, because yeah, I would love it if like nobody hated each other, but especially coming from my worldview, I know that it's impossible for people not to hate people. Like it's gonna happen. Like that's just the way that humans are. But I don't know. I've been thinking about that recently.
We're a very destructive race.
Okay, so indoctrination and Common Core. Even changing curriculum will not prevent indoctrination. Curriculum should help guide the teacher to create lessons and use materials that will train the students to think and function independently. Instead, most public school curricula, either adopting the Common Core standards or imitating them, do the opposite. Yeah, that's kind of like what I was saying earlier. Like that's what education should do. It should train the kids to like learn how to think for themselves and like learn to do the work on their own. But like you see like a lot of these kids, like they're just like
I think it has to do with
meanderly going by and like they
I think it has to do with economics too, because if you think about it, I mean, they touch a little bit on like how to finance, how to manage money, how to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, all kinds of things, but they don't like have specific classes on it. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like that's a big part of your life, how to manage your money. How, I mean, they didn't do anything with checkbooks when I was a kid, and that
Mm-hmm.
was like a big thing. I remember my mom always pulling out a checkbook and paying for shit, but they didn't teach that in school at any kind of length. It was
Right.
like you had one day of it, and this is how you do it. All right, now we're moving on to something else, you know, and then we're going
Mm-hmm.
to do this for 6 months.
Right. And like I have said before, there are things that like parents should be teaching, but like it's gotten to a point like that I can even admit right now it's really hard for like a single income household like to where like your kids do need to be like here in school for like 8 hours a day. That way you can work and make money and like pay your bills and all that stuff. So I mean,
Let me tell you, I know that firsthand. Let me
hmm
tell you.
yeah, but it's like so like if your kids are going to be there, like we have this expectation that like things should be like to help us out, like educate our children and like don't just fill their brains with like this useless garbage, like help us help them grow into society and become useful instead of all these people that are just sitting with their porn helmets fapping away and fucking
Yeah.
dude, it's the way that I
You
see
know, the thing I
society
hate the most
going.
is watching my kids being on TikTok for like 2 hours and then coming up and asking me an inquisitive question.
Yeah,
Like you were
especially
just staring at your phone for 2.5 hours watching senseless, stupid, funny videos.
mm-hmm.
Why don't you take 10 seconds out of that time and look your answer up?
No doubt. We live in this wonderful age of technology where like we have all this information and like that's pretty much like what I do like most of the time. I'm constantly reading about something, whether it's from history, whether I've been looking into like a lot of like philosophy stuff and that stuff is
Yeah.
really interesting. Definitely interesting. But let's go ahead and get back to it. Common Core has facilitated progressive indoctrination by smothering independent thought and stifling intellectual development. It effectively trains students not to think by emphasizing skill over content, process over product, and relative standards over absolute ones. Yeah, we are going to get into like the Common Core in a little bit, but like I've seen a lot with this Common Core, and that's exactly what it's doing. And like, what's to put everybody on the same standard when like at the same time they say, well, everybody is unique and different and special. Well, why are you going to put them all in this one like sort of, I don't know, it's really weird. The humanities suffer the most from the focus on teaching supposedly practical skills rather than quality content. Instead of reading great poetry and literature, English teachers ask their students to read more journalistic nonfiction and develop research skills. Instead of reading for meaning and writing clearly, students read for bias and learn to write fluff.
Yeah, I like this next part. History teachers now teach their students history skills, which involve everything except remembering actual history and synthesizing information. Consequently, both literary and historical content is drained of relevance or meaning. While students learn to process data, they do not think about anything particular.
True.
I just like that one part where
History
they
skills.
learn history skills, not so much remembering history.
Yeah,
They
and
don't want to remember history.
yeah, and there's a lot through history that you could go through that like really shows like because I know like a big saying like people
Fictitious or fabricated.
yeah, but I know a big thing that like a lot of people say like if you don't know your history you're doomed to repeat it. But it's almost and I've heard other people mention this, but like if you look like back through history, it's almost like we're not necessarily repeating it, but it's definitely like rhyming history. Like it like it's very similar to a lot of things that are going on that have gone on, but it's not exactly the same. So I don't think that we're doomed to repeat our history, but we'll definitely go down the same course of
Making the
like
same mistakes.
let's see. Math and science are hurt more by Common Core's obsession with the process over the product. And I have seen that. Like I was telling Charlie the other day that I saw this video of somebody trying to do like a Common Core math equation and somebody did it the old fashioned way. and they like recorded it side by side. They did their problem, got it done, went and made a pot of coffee, got a cup of coffee, started drinking it, and then the Common Core equation was solved. And like that's like been a problem that I think I even saw when I was in school doing math. Like they were more focused on like how you solve the problem than if you could solve the problem. Like
I actually got in trouble because math was my subject, and I actually got in trouble by my algebra teacher because I shortened the equation he was doing. And I'm like, you can reach that same conclusion in about 7 less steps. And he's like, well, that may work for the problem that you're using, but it won't work on every one. And I did it like 3 different equations, and it worked. And he got mad at me and sent me to the office, dude. Like, I can't remember the exact equation anymore, obviously, because this was like fucking 30 years ago.
Oh, man.
Shut up. But I mean, like, seriously, I did get in trouble, man, like,
right,
for correcting the teacher. And that would show you right there that they don't accept like your own thinking. They want you to think how they think. Period.
Yeah,
Out flat.
it's
and
definitely,
if you go against it, you're in trouble.
Yeah, because like another thing is like I know like a lot of people. I'm not one of those people, but there's like intelligent people who can like look at a math equation and like they can do it in their head and figure it out and write down an answer. And that's like kind of what I was getting at. Like people could do that, and that's like they don't like that. They like, no, we want you to show us how you got that. Well, I did it in my head and I figured it out. And I know like don't call me.
Yeah, like I remember all the quick ways they would teach you how to do shit. You know what I mean? Like, and they like Cody when he was still in school, he would bring papers home, and it would flabbergast me. I'd be looking at it like, what
are they doing?
Yeah.
What language
he's
is
like,
this
I
in?
know, because he's into math like I am, you know. It's just, I don't know. Yeah, I don't trust our schools nearly as much as I used to.
No.
And I do think it's a good idea that these people are starting to homeschool their kids. Unfortunately, I didn't have that option because I was a single dad for.
Well, plus, I mean, in a lot of ways, like a lot of people, like I was saying, like I've been listening to like people talk about how they are homeschooling, and I think like right now these days, like homeschooling has become a lot easier, and there's more like programs and stuff that you can find online to help do that. But if anybody is interested in that, you should probably go like look up some people. I know she goes by the name of Rachel Wilson. She just started a channel, and like she has the nickname Based Homeschool Mom. So she's going to start getting into like a lot of homeschooling topics and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that type of stuff, I would highly suggest checking her stuff out. But also like just like we live in this age of technology, just look this stuff up. I would be skeptical.
She was even confirming the fact that it's because I was watching a video that she was discussing this particular topic about schools and homeschooling. And she definitely said she started like 10 years ago, I guess. And she said when she first started, it was considerably more difficult. But I guess now it's really easy. You know, she said for people to get curriculums and get.
And I would be skeptical of people like using Google to look it up.
No, yeah.
I use a search engine called Brave. If anybody's heard of it, I like it. I don't think it's like completely foolproof of like the algorithmic manipulation that we see on the internet these days, but I think it is a little bit better. It doesn't like constantly track like everything that you're doing, so I like it. Check out Brave. It's pretty good. But we're going to get out of that article and start jumping into like the history of like the public school system, like how it was founded. Because like before, like we had like this public school system, like pretty much like parents like either taught their kids on their own, or they had like these private tutors that would like travel across the country and like they would do stuff like that. But one guy had this great idea that the state should control like this massive public educating system. And Mr. Man. Let's go check out Mr. Man. So this guy right here. What is that word? Daguerreotype? Under his picture, dog. I've never seen that word in my life.
I don't see what word you're talking about.
See what I got highlighted? Do you have this article?
Yeah, Horace Mann, known as the father of American education.
Well, this might be a different one that you don't have. I don't know. But this is kind of like stating like a little bit of the history before we actually get into Horace Mann. But they have a weird word right here. I don't know what that is. Daguerreotype, a public school crusader, Horace Mann. Okay, so the history of public schools in America. Hundreds of years ago, most learning happened at home. Parents taught their children, or if their parents could afford it, private tutors did the job. The Puritans were the first in this country to point out the need for some kind of public education. And I really like how they like use public on all this stuff. Like usually when you hear the word public, it just means like state funded and state provided government. They established schools to teach not just the essentials reading, writing, and math, but also to reinforce their core values. After the American Revolution, Thomas Jefferson argued that newly independent nation needed an education system, and he suggested that tax dollars be used to fund it. His pleas were ignored, however, and the idea for a public school system languished for nearly a century. By the 1840s, a few public schools had popped up around the country in the communities that could afford them. However, that smattering of schools wasn't good enough for education crusader Horace Mann of Massachusetts and Henry Barnard of Connecticut. They began calling for free, compulsory school for every child in the nation. They have to go for it, and your tax dollars have to pay for it. Massachusetts passed the first compulsory school laws in 1852. New York followed the next year, and by 1918, all American children were required to attend at least elementary school. Next came the movement to create equal schooling for all American children, no matter what their race. At the turn of the 20th century, schools in the South and many in the North were segregated. The 1896 Supreme Court ruling, Plessy versus Ferguson, upheld the legality of segregation. Finally, in 1954, the Supreme Court overturned its ruling with the landmark case Brown versus Board of Education, and public schools became open to people of all races. So that's a little bit of the history, but let's find out who this Horace Mann was. So is this the article that you had?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that guy right there. Horace Mann, known as the father of American education. Horace Mann, pictured here circa 1850, worked to establish a varied curriculum that excluded sectarian instruction. His vision of public education was precursor to the Supreme Court's eventual interpretation of the First Amendment's Establishment Clause and church-state separation principles in public schools. See, there's that word again. Daguerreotype? Yeah, that's weird.
Daguerreotype?
Yeah, have you ever seen that word? I've never seen that word before in my life. If anybody knows what that means, be sure to leave a comment. Remember to like, comment, and share the podcast. Best way that you guys can help us. But let's go ahead and get into this article. What? Are you doing a little Google thing and actually looking up information?
Yeah.
Kind of like what we were talking about. Oi. I got a bit of a stuffy nose and it's bugging the hell out of me.
A photograph taken by an early photographic process employing it. Oh, that might be the big flash.
Oh. Okay, that makes sense now.
And it is daguerreotype.
Daguerreotype. So it's talking about the picture. Interesting. Yep. Let's go ahead and get into this because this is kind of like a important topic to like the whole public school system. So, known as the father of American education, Horace Mann, 1796 to 1859, a major force behind establishing unified school systems, worked to establish a varied curriculum that excluded sectarian instruction. His vision of public education was a precursor to the Supreme Court's eventual interpretation of the Establishment Clause and church-state separation principles in public schools. Now, this has become like a big thing, the whole like church-state separation that like a lot of people say these days, like because it doesn't like actually come from the Constitution. It comes from a letter from Thomas Jefferson, I believe it was, and he had said that there needs to be like a hedge between the church and the state. But in the letter, he was more so talking like the state shouldn't be able to like tell the church what to do. But now people are saying, well, the church shouldn't have any saying in like what goes on with the state. But it's really weird. But that kind of like shaped how like education is these days. Mann attended Brown University and the Litchfield Law School in Connecticut. After graduation, he built a successful legal career and was subsequently elected to the State House in 1827 and the State Senate in 1833. In 1837, Mann played a key role in establishing the Massachusetts State Board of Education, and he went on to become the board's first Secretary of Education. You go ahead and get the next one.
As secretary, Mann advocated for common schools, institutions that would be available to everyone, regardless of their ability to pay tuition. Mann believed that universal education would allow the United States to avoid the rigid class systems of Europe. In his 12th annual report of the Massachusetts School Board, Mann wrote that education is the great equalizer of the conditions of men, the balance wheel of the society machinery. He also argued that the universal education would allow the United States to maintain a democracy. All Americans, he thought, must, if citizens of the Republic, understand something of the true nature and functions of the government under which they live.
I really like that part where he talks about avoiding the rigid class systems of Europe. It sounds a lot like what you hear Marxists these days saying, like where they hate like the whole class system and all that stuff. Blah. I don't know, made me smile. But Mann opposed sectarian instruction. In establishing public common schools, and I believe I've also heard people call them normal schools, Mann opposed sectarian instruction and instead advocated instruction in universal Christian principles and values that would allow students to make their own moral judgments. Can't see how that can go wrong. Mann's non-sectarian approach to public education was criticized at the time and is still viewed by some today as hostile to religion and detrimental to both individual and social morals. Some leaders of the Roman Catholic Church, for example, argued that common schools, while professing to be non-sectarian, in fact, embodied general Protestant principles contrary to the First Amendment. Yeah, you want to go ahead with this last one?
By the 1960s, in cases like Engel versus Vitale and Abington School District versus Shemp, in which the court invalidated school-sponsored prayer and Bible readings in public schools on Establishment Clause grounds. The Supreme Court had begun to use the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment to strike prayer and devotional Bible reading, usually from the King James Bible that many Protestants preferred, from the public schools. In defense of the non-sectarian schools in his last school board report, Mann argued that the common school earnestly inculcates all Christian morals, and in receiving the Bible, it allows it to do what it is allowed to do in no other system, to speak for itself. But here it stops, because the common school disclaims to act as an umpire between hostile religious opinions. This was originally published in 2009.
Inculcate. To impress, something upon the mind of another by frequent instruction or repetition. Instill.
So
They wanted
basically,
to
another word
instill
for
the Christian moral.
indoctrination. Basically, right along the lines of indoctrination and education.
Yeah, but see, I got a problem with this because, like a lot of what we see today with like the religious like stuff today, there's like 17,000 different denominations. So like this whole idea of like giving everybody the Bible has like really led to like private interpretation and like kind of how we were talking about with that whole like 6 and 9 situation where like someone can read
Perception.
like I see that a lot, especially in religion, where like somebody will say, well, I read this verse and I get this from it. And then another person will be like, well, I read this verse and I get this interpretation from it. And it's like, how do you determine who's right? And I don't know.
And it's a debate for another time, but that is why myself, I have a problem understanding religion because it's a perceptive situation, or as you would say, it would subjective.
Subjective, yeah.
It's subject to the fallible minds of men and how they perceive it. And it's just been rewritten, and who's to say that they even interpreted it the right way?
True. But I want to show off this book right here, The Dark Agenda, The War to Destroy Christian America by David Horowitz. I read through it. It's a pretty good book. It talks about like a lot of what happened throughout the school system that we're going to kind of get into. And I don't know, there's like things that he talks about in there, like because what we're going to get into next is kind of like this battle for eliminating Christianity throughout our school systems, like to where it got to the point where like teachers were like punishing students if they merely like prayed during school or like brought in a Bible and like or any other like Christian thing. But yeah, I don't know. I also wanted to show this off real quick. This is I found this for Horace Mann. It's an image from some of his writings that I thought were pretty interesting. So, thoughts from his writing. The object of the common school system is to give to every child a free, straight, solid pathway by which he can walk directly up from the ignorance of an infant to the knowledge of the primary duties of man. The highest service we can perform for others is to help them help themselves. Education is our only political safety. Outside of this arc, all is deluge. A patriot is known by the interest he takes in the education of the young. The common school is the greatest discovery the common school is the greatest discovery ever made by man. In our country and in our times, no man is worthy the honored name of a statesman who does not include the highest practicable education of the people in all his plans of administration. Had I the power, I would scatter libraries all over the whole land as the sower sows his wheat field. I hold treason against this government to be an enormous crime. But great as it is, I hold treason against free speech to be incomparably greater. If ever there was a cause, if ever there can be a cause worthy to be upheld by all of toil or sacrifice that the human heart can endure, it is the cause of education. I beseech you to treasure up in your heart these my parting words. Be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity. And that's some of his writings. Interesting. Let's go over here. From Futurism.com, the battle to teach evolution in public schools is far from over. It's 2017 and it's still an issue. So now this gets into like kind of what I want to talk about. Maybe maybe actually we should talk about this first because this kind of came before like all of this. Yeah, we should talk about this lady here, Madeline Murray O'Hare. This is a lady that is talked about in that book that I was just talking about. She was like a big supporter of like removing like Christianity and anything of its nature from the school system, like bringing up the whole separation of church and state and all of that stuff. But it gets really interesting because they have absolutely no problem if Islam is talked about in the public school system or any other form of religion. They just have this distinct hatred for Christianity and didn't want it in the public school system. So Madeline Murray O'Hare was an American activist supporting atheism and separation of church and state. In 1963, she founded American Atheist, and they have a neat little symbol right there to, yeah, they got a logo. And I've even seen people with that, like, tattooed on their arm, and they're like, yeah, that way you know who I am. And I'm like, I've never seen that before. And then I just saw it, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, aren't you guys special? And served as its president. I mean, and really, like, when you, like, look into, like, the atheist mindset of, like, everybody, like, it is almost, like, sort of, like, religious because they all believe, like, essentially the same thing. And they'll stick to their guns about it. Which her son, John...
Sounds awfully familiar to religion as well.
Yeah, like, that's what I'm saying. Like they claim to be, like, against religion and then still, like, hold, like, religious, like, ideologues. Like science, for example, a lot of them are like big on like science. Like you must trust the science. The science could never be wrong. Stuff like that. Like we see with like all these crazy.
Is based on being wrong.
They see with all these like mask wearers who like you can't be near me without a mask. Put your mask on. The scientist said it works. So after which her son John Garth Murray succeeded her. She created the first issue of American Atheist magazine. In God we do not trust. And identified as a militant feminist. Yeah, she was a wonderful lady. I think she even took the title for a long time, I believe in the 50s or the 60s, as America's most hated woman.
Wow.
O'Hare is best known for the Murray and Curlett lawsuit, which challenged the policy of mandatory prayers and Bible readings in Baltimore's public schools, in which she named her first son, William J. Murray, as plaintiff. Consolidated with Arlington School District versus Shemp, it was heard by the United States Supreme Court, which ruled that officially sanctioned mandatory Bible reading in American public schools was unconstitutional. The Supreme Court had prohibited officially sponsored prayer in school in Engel versus Vitale on similar grounds. After she founded the American Atheist and won Murray versus Curlett, she achieved attention to the extent that in 1964, Life magazine referred to her as the most hated woman in America. Through American Atheist, O'Hare filed numerous other suits on issues of separation of church versus state. And like, which is, I'm trying to, I know one of her sons wrote a book about her, cause of death, murder. Damn.
She got murdered?
She got murdered. I mean, she was America's most hated woman, so comes with the territory, I guess.
How was she murdered?
I don't know. Let's go down here and find out. Feminism. I do know that I remember reading that she had tried to go to Russia because she was a big old communist, and she wanted to go over to Soviet Russia, and they were like, no, we don't want you. She was like, well, they're just not communist enough.
Wow.
American atheists, court cases, kidnapping and murder. Okay, so in August 27th, 1995, O'Hare, her son John Garth Murray, and her granddaughter Robin Murray O'Hare disappeared from their home and office. A typewritten note was attached to the locked office door saying the Murray O'Hare family has been called out of town on an emergency basis. We do not know how long we will be gone at the time of the writing of this memo. When police entered O'Hare's home, it looked as if they had left suddenly. The trio said in phone calls that they were on business in San Antonio, Texas. Garth Murray ordered U.S. $600,000 worth of gold coins from a San Antonio jeweler, but took delivery of only $400,000 worth of coins. Until September 27th, American Atheist employees received several phone calls from Robin and John, but neither explained why they had left or when they would return. Employees reported that their voices sounded strained and disturbed. After September 28th, no further communications came from any of the three. American Atheist was facing serious financial problems because of the withdrawal of funds, and membership dwindled. Okay. So it sounds like they were kidnapped.
Kidnapped, exploited, and then murdered, it sounds.
Right. Wow. So, yeah, she was killed along with her son and her granddaughter.
Wow.
His body was found on a riverbed in rural Dallas County, but his head and hands were missing. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That's
horrific.
Yeah. Action even murder. Yeah, that's crazy.
That means the whole family was just wiped out then, huh?
Well, she did have two sons, and it sounded like they only got one. So, but I do know. I can't remember which. It might have been her other son that wrote a book, like claiming all the things about her. Like he would say in his book about her, like she was like really disrespectful to her father, and like was kind of because like he was a Christian and she was like a staunch atheist, and like she would like constantly get in arguments with him about it. And then like one day he had a heart attack, and she was like saying how much she was glad that he dropped dead and all this stuff. And then like she used like the whole death as a way to like blame Christians and say like Christians came to their house and were like messing with them, and that's what caused his heart attack. And yeah, it's but it is all talked about in like that book that I was saying, The Dark Agenda, which wow. I mean, yeah, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, so like the whole thing about her is like she was a big proponent of like pushing for like the separation of church versus state, or church and state. Like that's become like a big slogan for like a lot of atheists in our country these days whenever they talk about like anything the religious right is doing and all that stuff. But let's go ahead and talk about the battle to teach evolution now. Take a look at this article. So, we can listen to the article? Ain't that fancy. So, the monkey law. In 1925, a high school teacher named John Scopes was arrested, tried, and convicted of the crime of teaching evolution to his class in a public school in the state of Tennessee. Under a law known as the Butler Act, Tennessee had put an outright ban on the teaching of evolution in public schools. The Scopes trial, as it became known, lasted just 8 days, at the end of which the jury reached their verdict in less than 10 minutes. But that week produced one of the most memorable landmark legal cases in U.S. history, made the American Civil Liberties Union a household name, and forever changed how the American public viewed science education. The Butler Act remained intact. Oh, dang.
They found me.
No! The Butler Act remained intact for almost another 50 years after Scopes, only to be repealed in 1967 after being challenged by another young science teacher, Gary L. Scott, who had been fired for teaching evolution at a high school in Jacksboro, Tennessee, having challenged the constitutionality of the law and succeeded. Once the repeal in Tennessee was signed, other states had similar legislation prohibiting the teaching of evolution in public schools followed suit. But there was never really any reprieve. Even today, almost a century after the Scopes trial, the fight to teach evolution in public school is far from being over. What is this little video? Let's see what this is.
Milestones of the century.
This looks like a video that would have been played in like school or something like that. How they would roll out that little TV on the stand with the wheels and then play this.
This doesn't look like a TV on wheels situation. This more looks like a projector going against the screen.
True.
In 1925, biology teacher John Scopes spiraled to fame in the legal battle that became known as the monkey trial. Whether a man was descended from the monkey or just making a monkey out of man was fought in a courtroom.
You're not hearing it?
No. I was.
You were? But now you're not?
That challenged the truth of the Darwin theory of evolution. The existence of man in the prehistoric world was denied, for according to the Bible...
Well, that's weird. I'm hearing it. Well, we'll just skip it. It's just talking about pretty much how these people believe that we evolved from monkeys, and they're weird. I ain't no monkey. Evolution alternatives. You want to go ahead and take this one?
I don't know if I can get to it. While it's no longer illegal for America's public school science teachers to teach evolution, in the decades that have elapsed since Scopes, religious groups have endeavored to enforce the teaching of alternatives alongside evolution. These include biblical creationism, scientific creationism, and intelligent design, all of which, to varying extents, teach that life on Earth did not arise solely through evolution. There are also those who have lobbied for teachers to have the ability to teach evolution in a way that presents it as being scientifically controversial. This gross misrepresentation of established scientific data and hard evidence has alarmed some science educators even more than the outright rejection of the concept. While the laws that enforce the teachings of evolution alternatives have not successfully passed since 2004, 3 states have passed legislation permitting teachers to teach evolution in a way that frames it as being scientifically controversial.
Yeah, so I mean, that's been a big thing. The fight to teach evolutionism over creationism. There's like a lot of schools I know that like the only thing that they're gonna teach is evolution. Like there's no like varying difference, like how they were trying to say like alternatives alongside evolution. I think it's funny. This gross misrepresentation of established scientific data and hard evidence. I don't think there's really any hard evidence for evolution. I know there's like a lot of theories and stuff like that, but when they get into
there's a decent amount of evidence for evolution.
But hard evidence.
But just like a lot of other things, though, there's loopholes in some of theirs. There's gaps, you know, in the dates. But yeah, there's pretty concrete evidence on a lot of different situations when it comes to
Can it be replicated though?
I don't know. I'm not a scientist, bro. You can't replicate the fact that Jesus was alive either. So
nobody says that.
there's a lot of speculation and theories and hypotheses when it comes to a lot of different things. So
yeah, but when my problem is the fact that they're like saying like hard evidence. I don't think they're like there's like maybe like some sort of like scientific methods that they do say about like evolution that like you could talk about,
it's
but I don't
mainly
think
DNA and shit like that. Like they take these old bones and compare it with our DNA strands now, and we have a lot of the similar things. Only our brains are bigger.
yeah. I just don't think there's any actual hard evidence for it.
I will say,
That's my
I will
problem with it.
admit, I will admit that there is a big difference between evolution and adaptation.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Like I like because like I've heard like a lot of people like say like you can like prove evolution and like
I don't believe that we started off as a fucking fish.
yeah no
Okay. And
that
crawled
just
onto the land and learned how to grow legs. We'd have to have legs before we came onto the land, which in reptiles you can see it. If you think about amphibians more than anything. If you think about frogs, they start off as a little tadpole, no legs, no nothing, head, tail, swim,
mm-hmm.
and over time they grow legs and then can then hop and move on land and everything else. So that's part of my belief in evolution, I guess, because that originally probably did start off as some kind of fish, amphibious, and then became, able to walk on land. Maybe not at long periods of times because frogs have to go in the water. They don't have to live in the water, but they have to be near it.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
that
don't
is
know
something
like I'll say like sure like you could say like there's like some evidence for it, but like just like me how I believe in God, I believe in like creationism and all that stuff. I can't prove it, and I don't tend to say that like I could prove it. I'll like give arguments on why I believe it, but like that's like I see a lot of like these like I was saying earlier, like with like the religious like atheists who like believe in the science and all that stuff, like they'll say like, no, we can actually prove evolution. No, you can't. Just like I can't prove that this world was created. Like you can't.
There's scientific methods that they can experiment with to
but
come
nobody's
to
ever been able to like
fairly
repeat
solid conclusion. But
nobody's
to say that we came from fish and we grew legs, I do believe that we came from the Cro-Magnon man.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that we evolved from them. But the real question is, there's a big time gap there. Where did they come from?
Mm-hmm. Well, like
they say we came from apes, and I do understand that hypothesis as well because there's a lot of characteristics.
But it hasn't repeated itself.
Evolution, I don't know why would it repeat itself because we evolve.
I know, but like there hasn't been like another stage of evolution.
Evolution can be perceived in different ways. It doesn't always have to be physical.
I guess. I don't know.
The interior of our body has changed.
Because like I've read a lot of stuff on this, and like usually it all comes down to like these are just like theories that people are saying. Like they come up like with these like conclusions, like how they could say that like the world is like millions and billions and trillions of years old, but they can't physically prove it. I mean, they have these methods on like how they could speculate about it, but I don't think like there's like too many scientists will say like it's a proven fact. I think they have these methods on how they could reach those conclusions, but I don't think like it's a solid fact.
Well, the problem with is what we got going on now is there's too many perceptions on the hypotheticals, where everybody can perceive it in a different way, which makes it really hard to come to one solid 100% definition or conclusion of anything. Because there's so many different perceptions of what a hypothetical could be. I could hypothetically think one thing, and you could hypothetically think a different thing on the same topic. It's all hypothetical. Is your house coming down?
Possibly. Hopefully. I don't know. My biggest problem, like I don't care if like schools like teach about evolution. Like it's an interesting thing to like look into,
Right.
like the science that they
Get the mind thinking about shit.
But
you know?
my problem with this is like how we've been seeing like what I was talking about earlier with like their laws like banning like any form of Christianity in schools. Like if you're gonna like
And
teach
see,
about this stuff,
I'm not Christian either or anything like
Mhm.
that, but I think it was wrong when they took the national anthem out of,
yeah, like
or not the national anthem, but the what was it? Was it the national anthem? I think it
uh,
was called something else.
I don't know, but there's like a lot
And
because
the
I
only
know.
reason why they took it out is because of one nation under God,
Mhm.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The
Yeah, that's
whole
the national
reason
anthem.
they took it out is because of the one nation under God.
Like that's what like a lot of people like try to refuse is the fact that this was built at like this nation was built as a Christian nation. Like you see everything. Like I think it's even Thomas Jefferson. I believe he's the one who said it. I not 100% sure, but they did say like the Constitution was made for a more moral, religious people, and anything besides that will fail. But I mean, it's undoubtedly true that like the people, not every single one of them who founded this nation was a Christian or believed in it, but it like all of our currency says in God we trust. Like all of our things, like the I know I believe it was the Supreme
Yeah,
Court and even
why
like
would they take that out of schools and not take it off the money?
Mhm.
That's what bothers
Well, they've
me a
been
little bit.
trying. They have been trying. They've been trying to reprint our money. Like I know, the Supreme Court used to start with a. I believe they used to start with a prayer before they started their sessions. Congress used to do the same thing, and they've been doing away with a lot of that. There's been like a lot of like historical landmark buildings for all that. They used to have like all these plaques and stuff that said stuff about God, and they've been like taking all that stuff down. Like they want God completely out of our government and all that stuff. And like they've been doing good at it because it's working. But let's go ahead and talk about this. How long have we been going? An hour 12. Yeah, let's go ahead and get it to this last part. I was saying we were talking about it a little bit earlier about like the whole Common Core curriculum. So from the newamerican.com, Obama bribes states to adopt national education curriculum.
I don't trust him at all either. So anything that has his name on it, I'm not down for.
Who? Bomb dropping Obama?
Yeah.
That guy who dropped bombs on like people like a couple weeks after he was inaugurated as our president. So this is from December 27th, 2012 by Alex Newman. The Obama administration is using taxpayer money to bribe state governments to accept a dubious national education curriculum known as Common Core. And so far, the controversial campaign has flown largely under the radar. The
That's how they pass everything, dude. That's how they pass everything.
Mm-hmm. But I don't know what this I don't think I saw it in this article. I think they touch on it a little bit, but like a big way that he got Common Core passed throughout like our school systems and all that stuff through all these states is like how they were saying like he bribed the states. Like that's a big way that he did it. He was like, hey, if you guys enact this thing that forces all the schools to use this certain curriculum that I came up with a guy named Bill Ayers, who used to be with Weather Underground and put a bomb in a government building, got away with it. But let's go ahead and go on. The national scheme, which is already arousing some serious opposition, is geared towards standardizing educational requirements in a move that critics say represents an assault on local control over the school system. Homeschooling groups are expressing concerns too, and the outcry is growing louder every day. Ugh.
Incredibly, even the backing of billionaire Bill Gates and the Obama administration's Department of Education, the entire Common Core State Standards Initiative was developed and rolled out with almost no serious media attention. The eerie silence, of course, helped proponents avoid scrutiny in the early phases when it would have been much easier for critics to derail the scheme that will essentially nationalize the school curriculum.
Don't you just love that Bill Gates was involved with it as well? The guy who like thinks there's too many people on this earth, and he's
I
getting
love
into,
his
like,
computers
healthcare.
and shit, but him as a person, I like playing on his systems. That's all he's good for.
Okay. Okay, so down here it says the foundation of the whole national curriculum, however, may be built on sand. Analysis say that as awareness of the federal power grab increases, opposition will only continue to mount. When states signed on to Common Core standards, they did not realize that they were transforming control of the school curriculum.
Transferring, sorry.
Oh, transferring. Yeah, I started realizing that after I was reading more on it. But yeah, control of the school curriculum to the federal government, explains Sandra Stosky, 21st Century Chair and Teacher Quality of the University of Arkansas's Department of Education Reform, during a speech at the Heritage Foundation. Only Texas, Alaska, and a handful of other states are putting up firm resistance to the plan so far, but a few have withdrawn their participation and several others are considering doing so as well. However, with the opposition just getting started, opponents of the plan are expected to expand the campaign to restore local control over education in the not-too-distant future, which analysts say could yield results and throw a wrench into the controversial scheme before it progresses any further. Which, yeah, like, so basically, like, what this was is, like I said, they were giving, like, the federal government complete control over the school's curriculums and, like, letting the federal government determine, like, what teachers were going to be teaching, and it was going to be nationwide, and every single school was going to be doing the same thing, but, like, Texas...
So basically, so they can start pushing drones out of our schools without any resistance.
Yep. Yeah, I really don't want to read all this.
And that's basically what we become, is just a bunch of flesh baggy fucking drones for our government.
I'll put this thing in the blog. I mean, yeah, Common Core is like, hey, it just complicates like everything. And the fact that they try to push it onto states through bribing them with state funded money, like they were saying, hey, like we'll give you like $1 billion if you go along with this program. And
no, actually, it more describes, because I read that article, and it more describes that they convinced them to sign up. Well, they came out with this policy that would give schools funding, but the only way that you could get the funding is if you accepted this curriculum, which then was funded by the very people that were paying for it. And they didn't realize it. That's basically what it was getting across,
right,
is that they were lying to these people to get them to sign up for it. They didn't even realize that they were actually paying for it.
Yeah, it's all just a big mess, because I know like a lot of people argue that the reason why our school systems are doing so horribly, because like our test scores are like fairly low.
They're low.
Like,
we are so beneath a couple of countries that are ahead of us right now. Dude, we used to be number one in a lot of different things, and we are not number one in very many at all anymore. Incarcerated citizens per capita, we're number one in that.
I'll say, like, for now, like, freedom, I mean, most people, I know there are, like,
there's 187 sovereign nations out there that have just as much freedom as we do.
Yeah, but they don't have it necessarily like protected from their government written into like their constitutions. Like I was
we
just
have it written into ours, but it's not taken into effect.
No, but like in like the freedom of speech, like we're one of the only countries that actually has it like written down that like our government can't arrest us for things that we say. Yeah.
But do we?
I mean, if people understand their rights, they can fight against it. But like, there's
a
lot of people.
I mean, yes, it is in place, but do we though?
Yeah.
Do we?
Yeah, we cannot be arrested for things that we say by our government. Like I was just reading up in Canada.
If they decide they want to arrest you, they can. And
they can, but you have to go through trial and you have to be granted your due justice. I know there's a lot of cases in other things like the January 6th thing that I'm sure people will talk about.
Basically, what I'm getting at, okay, is yes, we have it written into our system. Yes, it's in our society, but it is not followed. It is not respected, and you can still get it. I mean, we get banned from social media shit all the time for freedom of speech situations.
But see,
I don't give a shit if they have a justification for banning it. We were speaking our mind on a topic in our nation. We should
but I mean,
not have been banned.
But the whole thing about the freedom of speech is just that our government can't and like take away. Like, the government can't do anything about us saying anything. Like, we can go up to the steps of Congress and we could say that they're a bunch of freaking idiots with their heads up their ass, and they can't arrest us for that.
But you can't walk up to a cop and say, fuck you.
You can.
I mean, you're supposed to be able to, but people have been arrested for that, for verbally assaulting a police officer. That's a charge.
I think it depends on, like, what all happens. I mean, essentially, we are supposed to have it. Like, if we state our opinions.
I agree.
Like,
I agree on that part.
If you make, like, threatening claims, like, if you make threatening claims, like, in, like, they have, like, the justification of saying, like, you're threatening somebody, then yeah, they can do something about it. But, like, I was just reading, I think I even showed you the other day that, like, there was a kid up in Canada who got arrested and suspended from his high school simply for saying that there's only two genders.
Yeah.
Like, stuff like that cannot happen. You cannot be arrested for, like, stating opinions like that here in America. Like, there's a lot of hate speech. There's a lot of hate speech laws in, like, all these, like, European countries and all that stuff up in Canada, all these other places. That's what I'm, like, kind of getting at.
The problem is, what I'm getting at is the problem with our freedom of speech. It is slowly being ripped from us by all these other policies that they keep putting out.
Yeah,
because pandering to all these other people and their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
That's because, like, all has no place in our judicial system, really. You know what I mean? Like, that's my point. But
yeah, we're giving
all these policies,
we're giving all these, like, corporate entities, like, way too much power, like, to control over us. Because, like, we are.
Most prisons aren't even owned by the government. They're owned by personal billionaires. I found that out just recently, dude. That kind of blew my mind. Like, corporations own the prisons.
Privatizing things.
Yeah.
Private ownership.
And it's ridiculous because they really, if they get you in jail, they don't want you to get out because they get paid per head per day that people are in there. And they feed them pennies on the dollar food. You know what I mean? Like, not saying they should be eating steaks or filet mignon or anything like that, but
yeah, we shouldn't make prisons comfortable for people.
No, we shouldn't. We definitely shouldn't. They should definitely stay on metal racks and all that, or whatever they are. And, you know, but
no, I will admit that, like, some people do get sent to prison for unjust reasons, but I mean,
they do.
It gets really. I think there's a saying, like, you would rather let 10 corrupt criminals go free than having, like, one innocent person locked away or something like that, or something.
Well, I would just rather cops and detectives and everything like that do their due diligence instead of, you know, just case closed.
That's why we need to get rid of, like, cop unions and stuff like that. There's, like, all these unions that everybody has that, like, keeps
and they actually have quotas. Man, I've heard this from officers themselves. They have quotas, end of the month quotas. And they'll just start randomly pulling people over, whether the person gets a ticket or a warning. It's still a pullover, and it's into their quota.
Oh yeah, I like it. Really bugs me, like the cops that'll just, like, sit in, like, a certain spot and, like, wait to, like, find people speeding. Like, there's a lot more egregious things going on in this world than people going, like, 5 miles over the speed limit. Like, do your job.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree, and I understand speed limits are in place for a reason, but
kind of arbitrary.
But if you're okay, so if you're in a neighborhood and it's only 30 miles an hour and you're doing 50, then yes, I do believe you should be pulled over. That's reckless endangerment. You know, you could hit a kid, you could hit a pedestrian, you could slam into a car and go into a house. Who knows? But if you're on the highway and it says 60 and you're going 65, leave me the fuck alone. Come on, I'm just driving down the road. You know?
Come on, man. You want to do some push-ups?
Yeah, how many push-ups we going to do?
Yeah, for those of you that are watching that haven't realized, I don't have my soundboard anymore, and I'm kind of upset about it.
I'm kind of happy about it, but...
That's it. You don't get your name anymore. Take that away.
Oh, no, please.
I can still control that.
Don't take my Facebook @yourmom.com away. Please don't do that.
All right, let's go ahead and get done with this. We're going to run this ad.
Yeah, I still got to cook breakfast, man. It's going to be a brunch now, thanks to you. No.
Now you're sounding all European with your brunch. You going to have some tea and biscuits with it, too?
I may. I may. Actually,
right,
we're talking Belgian waffles, bacon, and eggs.
Why are they Belgian?
Because it says Belgian waffle maker on the thing that I bought yesterday. So.
But what makes it different from regular waffles?
Thicker. Regular waffles are usually only about that thick, and Belgian waffles are about an inch to an inch and a half thick. Yeah. I can't wait to make some. They're going to be huge.
Okay, let's run this ad.
All right.
Couple of Hoosiers podcasts. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, CastBox, pretty much anywhere that you get your podcast. We do a live stream show, so be sure to come and check it out. It's usually either on Odysee or YouTube. We upload to Rumble as well, and also Bitchute, so go check us out and subscribe to our channels. cohpodcast.substack.com is going to be the new website where you can get all the blogs. I'm also writing blogs for other topics other than just what we say in the episode, so go check it out. cohpodcast.substack.com.
Smash that like and subscribe.
Do it.
Smash it.
I used to have a thing that would put that up, but it always makes the program run slow, and I don't like it, so we'll just do this. Fireworks!
Hey, we're the only ones that have fireworks.
Yeah, I have not seen another program that does fireworks, so you guys are lucky if you guys are watching this and seeing the fireworks. Count your blessings that you see them. But, yeah, if you're on Facebook, follow us there. Pretty much just go look us up if you enjoy what we're talking about and all these little articles that we read through and sometimes struggle through because we're kind of retarded. Sometimes. But it's been real. It's been fun. You guys go ahead and enjoy the rest of your weekend and all that stuff, and we'll catch you later.
Have a good weekend, guys. We'll see you Thursday.
Bye.